So it's September 15th, and this is a meeting of the Southborough Planning Board. The planning board is now in session. The first and only item on the agenda is zoning change, I don't have the agenda in front of me. Highway major
Retail.
retail. So I want to start and just ask Jay a couple of questions that have come up at previous meetings, and then we can go through the board. The first is that if this were to be changed to an overlay, would we have to re-advertise the hearings, or would our hearing for a zoning change be sufficient?
So I've thought about that a little bit, and there's no real hard and fast answer to it. So I kind of revert back to just kind of basic notice principles behind this, Mimi. And my feeling is that the purpose of our notices that we do is to give people kind of an idea of what the board may be hearing about, sufficient for them to come and comment on it. So generally, our approach to something like that is that if there's a substantive variation between what was in the published notice and available, through the records of what a bylaw would be, and then what it may convert into, then we generally take a conservative position and would suggest that renoticing is required. That's not to say that every amendment or every change requires a new notice. I think the public should expect, and there's more law around this with respect to town meetings. The public should expect some amount of give and play in the language of what they're hearing about, but to go from substantively a regular bylaw to an overlay bylaw, so to speak, to me strikes me, if I'm being conservative about it, and I kind of have to be as town council because we don't want procedural challenges to what you're doing, then I would generally take the position there that that kind of discretion is the better part of valor, and that a full new hearing notice would be required, because an overlay district is substantively different than just adding on to an existing bylaw in the way that's been proposed. I think it's a close question, don't get me wrong, and I think people could make a contrary argument. But I think it's safer where there's likely to be significant public interest in the subject matter to take the position that switching to a completely different kind of form of bylaw here might trigger those notice requirements.
Okay, very good, thank you. So the next question would be, and this was raised by a resident suggested this, could specific parcels be called out in the criteria? Like, could that be one of the criteria, parcel, 17.1 or whatever?
In terms of the parcels being affected by a particular subsection of a bylaw?
Yeah, well, like under highway major
Retail.
retail, under the definition, there's certain criteria that need to be
Mhm.
followed. Could one of those be applicable to parcels, blah, blah, blah?
Yes, I do think that is allowable, because again, you're allowed to kind of customize your bylaws in the same way that you could make that use subject to a certain number of other substantive conditions that wouldn't be shared by other uses in the district. Then I think that that's fine. Of course, we're always thinking about, is it such a small district and it's such a unique area that it's like a donut hole and it becomes spot zoning, which is incredibly rare, then sure, we might want to think about that, but that doesn't make it, the concept of limiting it to a certain portion of an established district doesn't give me much concern in terms of its legality before the Attorney General's office.
No. Okay, good. So that's a good jump off for our conversation. Ms. Houlihan.
Thank you. So, thank you for taking an effort and redlining and providing a new bylaw. Let me be clear, I am in favor of developing this land. I welcome the prospect of new tax revenue and greater convenience for our residents. I welcome innovation and opportunity. But what I cannot support is a process where an outside law firm hired by a development company with no deep ties to our town draft zoning bylaw changes that will have permanent impact on our community without engaging in the same rigorous public standards we hold ourselves to. I believe the best bylaw we can stand behind is an overlay crafted openly, vetted thoroughly, and worthy of our community. We are on a timeline dictated by a special town calendar. If we take the time, craft the right bylaw, we will likely also have an overwhelmingly positive vote at annual town meeting in the spring. If we were to look at the calendar, with all due respect, you would need to find new property. I know you made, Mr. Buckley, you made the maybe unintentional threat that you could go someplace else. You would still need to go through the same process through another town. I think we are well on our way. We can continue to have collaborative conversations, but I'm still in support of an overlay. Thank you, Ms. Luttrell.
Mr. Murray.
Hi there. Thank you. I want to just echo the same. This is my third time saying that I would be in support of an overlay. I think I made the comment that if it were an overlay, it appears as if that you might have almost unanimous support. At least there's favorable support we know from the select board. And what I heard from our hearings is that there's a number of members who would also support an overlay. And the reason I feel this way is because even though you've made some attempts to, I think, tighten up the current draft language, I still feel that this is a very large, potential project for the town. And it has also the potential that the planning board's role in this is minimal. I'm concerned that there are certain elements that could be waived by the Zoning Board of Appeals. One of the things I worry about is that we are, not so much on your property, but if a developer wants to come who owns another property that's in the IP district, whether or not they can go to the zoning board and say, hey, I want to do the same thing. And I'll go to the planning board and it's a right. And can I have, some kind of even economic relief? So one question I have for you, Jay, is there anything, the way that the current article is written, is there anything that the zoning board can waive? For example, for each of those criteria, setback, scenic road, size of the building, anything like that, can the zoning board waive any of those?
If the bylaw doesn't include an express waiver provision, then the only remedy would be through the variance process to waive dimensional, for example. So the zoning board doesn't have the authority to just waive hard and fast requirements. They would have to be granted the authority. Now, in some circumstances, we are seeing an evolution of bylaws in a lot of towns we represent where it's recognized that variances are difficult. So they are building in some waiver processes to allow some relief for good cause shown or for other reasons. So that would be possible here if it was expressly allowed for in the bylaw. If it's not expressly allowed for in the bylaw for the zoning board to waive it, then the only remedy there would be for a dimensional variance, for example, and the standard to achieve a dimensional variance is really difficult, as we know.
Thank you. I think that's my only question for now. Thank you.
Madam Chair, may I respond to some of the questions? I'm sorry, you're muted. Is that an affirmative?
Mimi, can you hear Mr. Buckley?
Nope.
You're coming through very, very low, Bob. Very quiet.
Okay, can you hear me now? Is it any better?
That's better.
That's
Okay.
better.
Yeah, first of all, on the question of an overlay, to me, an overlay is designated essentially a new zoning district. So since I would ultimately have to write the zoning opinion or attest to the zoning validity of this, I appreciate town council's conservative approach because I do think they're substantively different. I acknowledge that you can make an argument, but it is a substantive change where this is a text amendment and a zoning overlay creates a district that could be imposed on a portion of the underlying zoning. Substantively, I think you get to the same place by what we've done here, where basically this is the only lot on the southerly side of Route 9, or the Turnpike, where this potential use could be employed with all the caveats. I agree with council that the only way you'd be able to vary this absent express waiver language is by a variance. And as anyone who's practiced in the Commonwealth will tell you, a variance is a very, very difficult item to get, particularly when you create your own hardship. So, we spent a lot of time going back through the master plan saying, okay, this site has been specifically identified as warranting some attention and development. We've spent some time with the proposed, we've had serious negotiations with the proposed user that, and I apologize if he thought it was a threat, but it wasn't. That a number of communities would love to have this user, and we felt that we made a compelling case to this user that this site provides all of the criteria that they were looking for. And that user, by the way, is Costco. I think it's been out there for a while, but in terms of rumor mill, but it is Costco. And we would like to accommodate the timeline to get this moving so that we can do an outreach to the community and show them what benefits Costco has beyond just being a premier retailer, but what other attributes and contributions they'll make to the community. And we'd like to engage in that as soon as possible, but we felt that it was important to have the planning board support behind us before we engage in that type of discussion. And Costco has as any retailer or any user of that magnitude has identified other potential sites. So we want to move forward with this and do it in a responsible, informative, and transparent manner. So this was, in our estimation, the quickest way to do so by essentially putting a collar around where this could go through a text amendment and addressing the issues that were raised at the last planning board session. I struggle at times to see what the difference would be between putting a zoning overlay on this one parcel versus what we've done here.
Madam Chair, may I just respond to something?
Go ahead.
Oh, I don't think I exactly have the response, Bob, that you're looking for, but I just wanted to say, this town has been involved in a lot of effort on Route 9 and thought, and I appreciate that you're coming in and you want to do something nice for that lot. My particular issue is, and I'm chair right now of the Master Plan Implementation Committee, is that nowhere in the master plan does it actually say what you're trying to do. So while there are 4 recommendations and goals that this town have been working towards, as well as the EDC and the select board and others, it doesn't specify what would be right for the town. The recommendations in the master plan there was some latitude. What a few of us are saying on the planning board is the better process for this town would be overlay. And I'm telling you just my personal opinion is that so it doesn't open up those other parcels to the same zoning. Now, I did notice, and I did look up the Results Way project that you did in Marlborough, and I know that was the overlay district that I asked you about. And in that district, there are 2 different sub-districts. So I think that that's some of the flexibility that we're looking for. Town council just mentioned, yes, you can create 2 different sub-districts. That could very well be where we end up. And I see that that is also, I don't know the particulars, but that's what happened in as the outcome, it looks like, in Marlborough. So I fear that this is being kind of simplified, and while we all like the end result, I don't like the unintended consequences, and I think that there's too many parcels that are in play. I only want your parcel to be in play. So I'm just trying to be honest with you. The reason that I prefer the overlay district is because then we can really talk about what we would like to see in that district.
Thank you, Ms. Braccio.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. Jay, if I could just reiterate what you said. So we could actually make this bylaw specific to certain parcels that would fall within this, correct?
I don't see a reason why you couldn't.
Okay. So that being said, I spent a lot of time, as I know, Marnie and Debbie has as well. I spent a lot of time thinking about guardrails that could be put in place, you know, that we could protect other areas of town. I would pleased with the new draft bylaw that came. I had one change on it under D, that the lot does not egress on a scenic road, was what the point I was trying to make at the last meeting. So, but other than that, I've had a lot of chance to talk to a lot of people in the last week, as I'm sure many members of the board have. And I think that we've repeatedly heard loud and clear from many residents that they're looking for more business on the Route 9 corridor that would provide tax benefit or relief to the currently heavily burdened residential tax rate. I know there's always unforeseen circumstances, but this parcel has no residential abutters. And if we don't do something, or at least to attempt to do something, the taxpayers, in my opinion, are who could ultimately lose out. And obviously the taxpayers would have the right to vote on this at town meeting. I think with being able to add parcels, for me, I think the guardrails are there to allow what the taxpayers want. I'm hopeful that Atlantic Management will remain a good partner if this goes through town meeting, through the permitting process, that we would have the collaborative relationship we've had now. And I guess the hardest thing for me is to think of what a worst case scenario would be. That, and again, zoning should never be dictated by a specific project. And I wholeheartedly believe that on a potential project. But I believe that these changes and what the potential could be and the opportunity that could present for that site, the taxpayers of Southborough would truly benefit versus this potentially going to another town potentially next door to us. So I think for me, I've had to consider all of the things, and I think we're on the right path. And you know, I'm comfortable with the guardrails we've put in place outside of the overlay. Thank you.
Could I ask,
Thank you.
Madam Chair, for a point of clarification? I just want to confirm that we've researched your town records in terms of scenic roads, and the change to egress is fine, but we found no indication that Cosland is a scenic road.
That's correct.
Okay.
So back to the original question I asked about specific parcels being called out. So in your opinion, Jay, if we called out certain parcels under the criteria of the definition of highway major retail, wouldn't that in essence have the same effect as an overlay?
I think in essence, I think there's a little bit of a difference, but it legally, certainly, yes, it does, because the purpose of an overlay and the reason why we do overlays for 2 reasons. One, because we want to define an area that has a special circumstance to it. That's reason one. The second is, and that's would be something different than what's here is we don't want to upset the apple cart for what may be allowed underneath. We want to give people options. So overlay is like an option zone. Here, we're not adding another layer on top of it. So we're not, but in essence, it has the same effect because everything that's still allowed in the entirety of this zone is going to continue to be allowed. Whereas a segment of this zone or a portion of this zone that excludes another portion of this zone is going to be available for this particular use. So in essence, it's the same thing. We sometimes approach overlays a little bit different where we have one particular use in mind that we want to have in a limited segment on it, but still allow a lot of stuff to go on underneath. MBTA zoning was a big one there. Cannabis zoning, we did a lot. Adult entertainment zoning, we see things like that where we want to micro target certain areas while not really changing what's going on underneath. Legally, at the end of the day, there would be no daylight between an overlay and what we're doing here in terms of what's being allowed. Like I could design an overlay for this that would do exactly the same thing as what the draft bylaw that the proponent prepared here. So we could accomplish it in two different ways. So I think your question is appropriate. Some nuanced difference if you're a real zoning nerd, kind of like I am, I guess. But for the most part, we're accomplishing the same thing. With all due respect to Marnie and Debbie's arguments, because I get it entirely why sometimes we like to do overlays. So I do think that sometimes overlays get a little more cumbersome, where I think here there was an attempt to be a little more surgical, but at the end of the day, no one would really notice the difference insofar as what is trying to be presented here.
And so my second question would be to take off on something that Ms. DeMaria said. So if there were specific parcels called out under the criteria, those could not be changed under a variance because they're not dimensional, correct?
That's right. The dimensional variances, that would be a use question.
But we don't have use variance.
You do not have use variances, correct.
So that would do two things. It would,
And don't ever change that, by the way. So
oh, no, it took us a long time to get there, believe me.
Yeah.
So I guess, so my question for Ms. Houlihan and Ms. DeMaria would be, if calling out specific parcels in the criteria of that definition would limit it to that particular area on the south side of Route 9, would that answer your concerns or alleviate your concerns? Ms. Houlihan?
So I think my biggest concern is just pure process. It's the rigor that we take the time. Like we've literally had 3 weeks to think about this. Like no offense to my other planning board members, but for us to look at this and be like, yeah, this looks good. I think this looks good. I think that's a lot to ask of this planning board for a zoning bylaw that we didn't actually we weren't asked to participate in. If you think about the bylaws that have been passed in this town, traditionally that are zoning, planning board has been part of it. I personally have written bylaws. I have advocated for them. We've had public hearings. What worries me here is we're on a timeline to rush a process that I'm not sure we are all very confident has been thoroughly vetted. This is the concerning part for me. While the outcome and what I'm hearing is very similar, whether we do an overlay or not, my biggest worry is that we hold ourselves to such high expectations, but now we have a calendared meeting and the delay, the conveyance of property that happened with Atlantic Management happened in December 24 and January 25. At that same time, we started our own industrial park district conversations. Publicly, we talked about this. if they were engaged in our town, they would have known we are trying to address our IP district. We've had meetings and discussions and meetings. My worry is that what we're trying to do now is being tabled to advance this, when it should all be part of one large piece of zoning bylaw that gets put to the town to say, this is how we think about our industrial park district. So while the outcome is what you're asking, Mimi, yes. Do I support the process still? No. So I still can't necessarily advocate for this. I'm sorry.
So I still have concerns as well. I spent the morning and weekend looking at Chapter 40A, Section 5, because I was trying to understand the process. And that section of Mass General Law says, zoning ordinances and bylaws can be adopted. And it says, but only in the matter, in the manner provided below. And there's numerous things that we're not doing. That I would say bothers me. One thing that I noticed is that I don't exactly know which parcels, except for the ones that have been included in the map, but I really do feel like we would need a map. I believe one of the parcels you don't own. So I went on the Patriot the cards today on the GIS maps, and I see that one of the parcels is an EMC lot. That's a question for you, Jay. Whether this owner can suggest zoning to another lot, and in fact, what I read of Section 40, Chapter 40, Section 5, is that there should be some kind of like notification to towns and to those impacted by the change in the zone. And I think to Marnie's point, I don't think any of that has been done. So we have all heard from people in town who have an idea of what the impact could be to the other lots, but I don't know if, what does EMC say? They, I believe, still own one of the lots. Maybe they're supportive, maybe not. What do the other property owners within the IP district? I agree with Mimi and with Marnie, rather, we haven't had enough dialogue on this. I'm afraid that this is one of the biggest things to come into Southborough, and we've had only a few hearings, and we don't even, there's still a lot of questions, I think, to be answered. So while I like an overlay district, I also like that potentially the overlay district might be bigger than this parcel. I've had other people over the weekend say, hey, I have a lot down on Route 9. Why is it fair that this person comes in and they want and get their way on this article? And I've been trying to do something with my lot. And so I spent time over the weekend looking at Marlborough and Westboro and your projects and how they, worked through things, and they did create some separate zones. And as I mentioned in the overlay in Marlborough, there's two separate things. I think that we have to do some additional thinking about this. The planning board should be planning. We shouldn't be told what we need to do and push something through town meeting. I also don't think it will pass town meeting. I don't think you have enough people who have had the time to digest this. I don't know that, but I think that the process is being rushed.
Thank you, Debbie. So the notification process laid out in Chapter 48, Section 5 has been done. That's done through the planning board. It's in the papers and the
with the abutting neighbors, with the abutting towns?
Yes. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
So all hearings follow that same notification process. And the question of whether you can zone on someone's property without their permission, yes, we do it all the time.
Yes, we do, but I'll just mention, we have had hearings where we have, asked the proponent, gee, did you talk to the property owner?
Well, is that a project or is that a zoning change?
No, we've had a zoning change where we had a proponent wanting to make a zoning change. It was a citizen warrant actually, but didn't talk to the property owner. You know, so I think that's just as courtesy, but I do think that there's a lot of little details I want to know about open space, and I want to know whether all that's going to be reserved and preserved, and all the other things that we've been trying to do as a board, even thinking about implementing some of the things that we would like to put into site plan or into some of our decisions having to do with environmental controls or impact, that kind of thing. That's the kind of thing that I would like to make sure, you know, we have in these, you know, kind of things. And I do think that there's, you know, that the process is being rushed.
Oh, and the other thing I was going to say, it's perfectly fine under Mass General Law, Section 48.
Okay.
48,
Well,
Section
for
5.
for an owner to bring forward an article, right? That's not their property. That was one of my questions. So that's okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
and you can have the hearing on the same night as town meeting. We haven't done that. We'll have 4 before town meeting.
If I may, Madam Chair, I mean,
Sure.
again, we're not asking, and I realize it's my opinion, but a dramatic change to the whole corridor. You're still free to do the vetting and actually apply it to this lot as you go forward, if you were to do an overlay. We're just trying to address what we perceived as an opportunity and targeted it so that it would only enhance this aspect of this property. And as the chair indicated, the required notices were sent out, and this is the process that one engages in to have a recommendation from the planning board, or no recommendation, and let the voters decide.
Well, the voters will decide, but it does require a report from the planning board at town meeting. So let me ask you, Attorney Buckley, what is your thought on calling out particular lots in the criteria?
From a overall standpoint, it's a little odd. I agree with Attorney Talman. He probably could do it. What I want to avoid is a map amendment, because right now we have a text amendment. If we have the text amendment saying that as of the date of October 27th, 2025, the foregoing would be applicable to lots, and we put this maybe as an additional condition, map and parcel numbers. I think that's okay, because we're not changing the map, because I think then that's another notice. You're doing a map amendment to impose something different on one parcel, but to put the map and parcel numbers in the criteria, I mean, basically what we're doing with A through G is essentially that, by putting collars around what can go, and it really boils down to one particular area comprised of probably a few map and parcels, some of which may not be owned by the owner today, but it doesn't affect substantively their rights, that parcel owner today, because they could choose not to, or they probably wouldn't qualify because it wouldn't be large enough if it didn't include all of the lots. So substantively, you're not adversely impacting any individual property owner's rights. So you probably could do it. It's odd, but you could do it.
Would you be open to that?
I absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, do you disagree with that analysis? I mean,
No, again, like you can't find in the zoning act or in any cases under the zoning act or in any guidance as to how you structure these things. The overlays are they've kind of evolved over time, and there's been some guidance on them. The fact that we're essentially carving out specific parcels but not changing the map seems to me to be appropriate. There's nothing in the zoning act that suggests that we can't do it. There's no law that says you'd be confined to doing a map amendment or an overlay if you chose to do it this way. I don't think the Attorney General's office is going to scrutinize or question the wisdom of such a limitation. It seems perfectly fine to me.
So my feeling is that although usually zoning amendments aren't brought forward by parties that aren't municipal entities in our town, it has happened before. And in fact, that entire EMC property was rezoned at town meeting by EMC.
We see them all the time. So proponents come in all the time. In fact, I do have another large retailer that may or may not be a Costco doing something very similar to what Bob's client is trying to do here. They approached us, took meetings, had discussions, and then got something before the town meeting. Happens pretty frequently.
Yeah, not that much here, but
Yeah.
but nothing against that. It's just not something that we're used to, but it does happen, and there's no issue
Madam
with
Chair,
that.
the comment about the Marlboro project, that's precisely what we did. We proposed the zoning and articulated the various zones. The difference there, that was all virgin land or land that had, and it was 109 acres or something to that effect, but it was a large tract of a single lot that once HP left, was in need of some type of repositioning. Here we have 20 some odd acres, so it's a much smaller parcel. But nothing changes the ability of the planning board going forward to take a broad look at this whole corridor. And if you wanted to do an overlay, we actually, in the text, we actually, in terms of ancillary uses that would be associated with this, we put a $50,000 square foot collar on that, with the idea that we said there was such greater amount of allowed pursuant to this bylaw, because we were under the impression that you may be in the future altering that. So, and we said, if that's the case, you'd probably want to consider these out parcels as part of that process. And if they grant additional square footage, encourage parties to use it, then we should provide for that.
So the point I was trying to make is that that this bylaw is going to town meeting, and that's why the select board called the town meeting. So my feeling is like I would like to have it be in the best shape possible and to avoid any unintended consequences, and should it pass, as opposed to just opposing it and letting it go through as is. And although I think that the changes made in this current version were pretty good, there are still a couple of things that I would tighten up if we didn't decide to go with the specific parcels where you would not need all the parameters in there if it only applied to certain parcels. And Karina, I was remiss at the beginning of the meeting. Al Belniak had written a letter that he wanted read into the record, and I completely forgot about that.
Okay. I was going to read it at the end of the planning board's question and answers. Would you like me to read it now?
Oh, either way, I guess. Is there a
It's not very long. I can
is
read
there
it.
a position of the board? Yes, Ms. Houlihan.
Yeah, I would suggest we move forward. If you have very specific suggestions to the bylaw language, I think we get through all of that. Mr. Belniak doesn't provide any specific details or feedback on that, so I think that's where the conversation should have. We close out the meeting with reading the letter and actually get the opportunity to kind of get that down. So we're not here till 11 p.m.
So so I'll say the things that that I would change on what is written if we don't choose to go with the specific parcels, which I think would offer the greatest amount of protection, would be under B, the lot has frontage on an existing public or private way. I would change it back to connects directly to the eastbound travel lane of Route 9. Because having vehicular access is words without meaning. And the other thing that Ms. Brascio mentioned a lot does not have, I would put access and or egress on a scenic road.
You might want to do ingress or egress.
Right.
The access encompasses both ingress and egress, generally speaking. So simple, I mean, either way, it amounts to the same thing. But when you use egress, we normally use it with ingress.
Okay. Okay. So access would be both?
You can do access to and from, or you could do ingress and egress. Either way, I'm not particularly concerned about it, nor do I want to be picayune on word usage here. I think we're trying to do the same thing.
Well, but it needs to say what we want it to say.
Yeah. So access to and from, or ingress and egress, I would
We'll
use.
put ingress or egress.
But my preference would be to just call out the particular parcels. So I don't know so something's going to town meeting. I don't know what the board's preference is on what that would be.
Well, even if we would call out the particular parcels, I think the appropriate way of doing it would be to say, kind of a lead in a large format, single tenant located on map and parcel numbers, whatever they are, subject to the following criteria. So that you identify the parcels and then you maintain the criteria too. The text we can play around with, but I think the idea would be to identify the map and parcels, the use, and then put the caveats as to that use on those parcels. Which would be essentially the same.
So one of the caveats wouldn't be that it's these particular parcels, that would be in.
But it accomplishes the same. I think what you're saying is the uses on those parcels is a single format retail use on those parcels only, subject to these limitations. At least that's my initial thought of how to draft it. I mean, you could add another H, and the foregoing has to be on parcels A, B, C, or whatever, but map and parcels, whatever, but just seems a little odd to put that on. It's not a limitation. It's other than a limitation of location. I think it belongs in the introduction, but we'll think about it. I understand the concept. I just think if you said it was the use on these parcels, these specific parcels is permitted under the IP district with a special permit, subject to the following additional controls. And I think that's the way to do it.
Mimi, can I just say one thing, Bob, in saying that
Sure.
it came to my head, my thought, what if you reverse that sentence you just said and put the first part of the phrase first and the second part second?
You want to play it back for me?
You said that it didn't make it sound like, this use is only allowed on these parcels,
Yeah.
period, right? Subject to these following criteria. That's what I'm saying. It sounded more kind of open-ended on one, just my opinion.
Yeah.
So,
I think the
that's all.
intent is to identify the exact parcels and to say that on those parcels, this highway major retail use would be permitted by special permit, if you meet these criteria. You could, if you don't meet those criteria on those parcels, then it wouldn't qualify.
But do all those parcels meet that criteria? I think abutters don't. They will not have direct frontage on a public or private way. It would have to be through your property. So like that's where I think we have to think through. So maybe your two, but maybe the one that's not owned by Atlantic Management Company. I think that's where we need to be very thorough on including those parcels if they actually still meet all those criteria.
Also, we have only 17 acres in Southborough now. We don't have the 20. If you're calling out the parcels, we won't have 20.
Yeah, but it does,
Well, it does say, or
you-
partially located in another municipality to cover that.
Okay, so that would have to be included in the definition of the parcel, that some of it is located in the different municipality.
It is, well, it would be one of the criteria.
The other food for thought is this planning board discussed before we tabled the IP district for next spring, increasing to 75,000 square feet. So this creates a little bit of a conundrum because this has 50,000. So are we going to go with 50,000 or are we going to come back and then change it again when we do the IP bylaw in the town?
Well, we said, if it says shall not exceed 50,000 in the aggregate or greater if allowed pursuant to this bylaw. So if you change it and increase it, it's allowed by the bylaw and we'd get the benefit of that. So you'd go up to 75.
Okay, I just want to make sure we think through everything because as we're kind of changing things on the fly, again, this is just my concern about the process.
Would you like to see the map pulled up, Marnie?
No, I think, I think that we need to your point, Mimi, if a bylaw is gonna be put forward to the town, we have to do our job and our diligence to make sure it's the best bylaw on the expedited timeline. So I just want to make sure that someone is paying attention to these details. I don't know if we can all do it right now because I feel like that's like a working session and maybe that's something that Mimi, and not to volunteer you, but you and Karina and, Jay and Mr. Buckley and Atlantic Management crew can kind of work together offline to make sure that as we go forward through these public hearings, a lot of these things are vetted. So like we feel comfortable knowing that like this new language, I know it gets done and then it gets put forward to us. And I don't know if that violates our public hearing process, but I think it would be helpful considering we don't have a lot of time to make sure that all of the angles are evaluated before it goes to town meeting. And so we're all comfortable with the language because we keep changing and tweaking little words here and there. I mean, I know we're still in the public hearing process and we have 2 more meetings. And then the third town meeting. So we have 3 meetings to get this right, and the warrant article closes. So the language actually should be crisp before it goes to print, because if we're up there changing the warrant language, and Jay, you've witnessed this, it becomes a debacle, and forget about it because it's zoning.
If I may comment, a couple of things. With respect to the question was asked for the parcel that is not owned today by Atlantic, that would be one of I think that's addressed in the last paragraph, which is that would be one of the abutting parcels, which allows for the 50,000 gross square feet. So the primary parcel would be the 17 plus acre parcel, the locus that has 17 and plus with a plus or minus in Southborough and
7 acres in West
7 acres in Westboro. So we can identify that. And the other parcel that was raised earlier, that is between Route 9 and the project site, would be one of those, would be the abutting parcel that allows for the ancillary complementary services. But we'll address that. And with the chair, we want to start reaching out to the community with respect to the benefits to the community of the Costco use. that go beyond just the retail, what they are in terms of active participants in the community and their benefits, et cetera. So while we're going through this, I think we owe it to the residents of the town to give them data to help inform them on the decision that they'll be faced with. So I just don't want the board to be upset if they hear about neighborhood meetings or group meetings that we would intend on scheduling. And we'd love to share the information with the board at not this meeting because we have to organize it and present it, but we've been holding back for fear that we would go over some lines of responsibility. But now that we understand where you're coming from, and we'll give it our best shot at trying to further target it, that we just want to let you know that we intend to start reaching out to the community.
That's fine, but I think the planning board, we're working on zoning, and whatever passes town meeting, whatever the intentions are to develop that, may or may not happen.
Right.
There's no guarantee.
No,
So I just want to be clear about that before the carrots start getting dangled.
Yeah, no, but for people to vote, I think in addition that they understand what the zoning does and what the potential benefits are. And that would be our intent.
Yes, Ms. Willian.
My only recommendation, which I imagine is your expectation as well, is that if you're doing public hearings, the planning board is made aware of those.
Sure.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
no problem. Yep.
Anybody else on the board have any questions or comments?
I do. I'll go after Marnie if you have anything else, Marnie. No. Okay. So for me, there's no question the permit granting authority must be the planning board. And I'd like to see that in the warrant.
Well, that is a substantive change. I think I'd have to raise it with council. I mean, can we do that?
I'm not particularly worried about that change. I don't think it changes really what the public notice aspects of it there. That's the kind of tinkering that I think the public can expect. You know, looking at it differently, Bob, if that was a change on the floor of town meeting, I'd probably allow it, or encourage the moderator to allow it. I think it's a reasonably anticipated kind of change.
So that can just go after parens after the use 174(8.6C 16 after that use. How it's done in other sections of the code, it just says in paren note special permit by planning board.
Okay.
Then I just had a couple of other little things. Just for the readability, there's a couple things up in the first paragraph. I didn't really understand why they're there, and maybe others will feel the same way. But the two pieces in parentheses, which you add, you know, which may or may not be sold under its current brand when you're talking about the grocery. I'm not sure if that adds anything. I don't know if that means something special to you, but like for me, I was like, is it a chocolate shop and they're selling chocolate in the grocery? Like, I didn't understand what that meant, or if that's just extra words that don't need to be there.
Some communities, if you sell your own product, is at a warehouse that you're just distributing your own product. And the warehouse is a different use than retail. Retail envisions a variety of products being sold with different brands. To the extent you sell your own brand, are you warehousing and selling out of the warehouse? Just an abundance of caution on that.
Okay, so it sounds like that's from your experience.
Yeah.
And then there's that other bit about excluding storage. So is that similar, or is that meaning that's adding to this floor area ratio or something, and that's going to be in a different building?
It's the 50,000 square feet of minimum excluding storage.
Excluding storage.
Yeah, you have to have 50,000 square feet of front space, sales
Okay.
space.
Okay, and then under A, where we talk about the 20 acres, I'd like to add excluding conservation land. So I don't think there's much in this parcel, to be honest, in that. Yeah, but yeah, there's a little.
Do you mean conservation land or wetland? Because conservation land, I'm a little, and that's fine. Either one would be I'm going to defer to others on that, but conservation land that could mean different things to different people. So if it's restricted conservation, I mean, I just want to be specific because I don't want to leave it to subject to interpretation. There, Debbie. So
I was thinking wetlands. So
Okay.
could it be wetlands is what would be appropriate.
well, what I would say is wetlands as defined under the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act.
Okay, so
the-
exclusive wetlands.
So-
as-
If that is we'll discuss that, but in fairness, I mean, we balance the 20 acres trying to target this. And I don't know, because I haven't looked at the site from a resource area analysis. Let's assume for sake of argument, there are 5 acres of wetlands that are being excluded. We'd like to make that a lot area of at least 15 acres. We don't want to be penalized going forward. Now, we put 20 acres out there under the assumption that the entirety would count. If you're now excluding resource areas, does that 20 become 15? Just a hypothetical. It may not even be applicable. I just am not sure.
I actually don't think it is. I looked at the map this weekend. I think it's minimal, but other areas of the code say exclusive of wetlands.
Yeah, no, I understand that. It's just that
that's usually in density calculations, though, which wouldn't really be relevant here.
So if it was a parcel that was many acres of wetlands, you would count that toward the 20 acres?
right. It wouldn't be developed,
Right?
but for purposes of gross square footage of the lot area, yes. So if you're saying you're excluding that, then it's only, I think, appropriate to say then you exclude that from the total. But we'll
Okay.
look at the lot to see if it's applicable.
Okay. Thank you. And then I think just one more. The paragraph that got moved up, the in connection with the foregoing, where you say you talk about the 50,000 gross square feet in the aggregate or greater, if allowed pursuant to this bylaw. I think we have to say pursuant to 174.86 IP Industrial District. Now I'm not sure, but I think that's the underlining zoning. So I think what we're saying is the 50,000 is tied to the IP district. So that's 174.86. So I think when you meant the bylaw, you meant like the larger bylaw, but I think you mean the IP zoning. So it's 170, it should be changed to 174-86. I'd like it to say IP Industrial Park District.
Okay.
And then,
I don't have a problem with that.
okay, yeah, I think it's just like the reference. I think that's okay. So, I think so I did have one other issue with the sentence about, one of the sentences down below, for purposes of this definition sentence, it's a long sentence and it talks about separated from the lot. You know, but that might be reworded now. First of all, it can be more simplified, but I think
You have Washington Street, which was relocated. You abandoned the old Washington Street and you have a new Washington Street. And what we were trying to capture there is that on the other side of Washington Street, the northerly side, I don't even know if it's the northerly side, but going towards the eastbound Route 9. So you have the parcel, Washington Street, and then the out parcel.
Okay.
We're saying it's that those lots, those may be subdivided into 2 or 3 various uses.
Right.
But either the lot, which is the use lot, or a road that directly abuts the use lot.
What sentence is this,
It's the
Debbie?
last sentence.
It's the last sentence, and I just stumble over it because I think it's like long and convoluted, and I wasn't sure what for purposes of this definition. And then I think with one of the changes was that's where the added the addition of use by a public, no, that was there, use by a public or private way, which I understand now you're talking about Washington Street.
Well, and part of Causland is the front portion is a public way, the rear portion is a private way.
Okay, so when we weren't talking about parcels, I was wondering, because, we know that, for example, I think I brought this up previously, that, the 495 Route 9 interchange is been, highly looked at for the last, I don't know, dozen of years, and that configuration might change. So I was thinking that, there should be like a road classification there or something, because I don't know if we can anticipate the future, but there might be something like a research drive or one of these sorts of things, because we know that Mass DOT has been looking at this area. I don't know about that specific area, but because of the interchange, they've been looking at putting, a different configuration down there. And so I was thinking that it could be interesting to maybe qualify that a little bit. So now I know what you're talking about, though. I think that's okay. And, like, I wouldn't want it to be a major arterial, for example. You're talking about really a local road. You're talking about
No,
something,
yeah, it's within the site.
right?
and-
But I
and-
would want it to be not an arterial. But I think if you point out the specific lots, my concern goes away with that. And I think that's all I have. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Karina, do you want to read Alan's letter now, and then we'll ask for comments from the public?
Sure. So we received this letter this morning, September 15th, 7:35 a.m. via email. A letter for the record for tonight's September 15th, 2025 Planning Board meeting. Alan said, please accept this letter as my opinion on the proposed zoning text amendment for our meeting on Monday, September 15th, 2025. I can't attend in person or remote via Zoom due to a work meeting, but I want to make sure my views are clear and heard. I strongly urge my fellow planning board members to really look at the amazing chances we have here and embrace it. This isn't about a specific project, but it's a key step to allow a future great project to happen. This piece of land has been empty and unused for more years than I can count. The proponent sees its huge potential, and it's very likely they already have a strong retail tenant lined up. A development like this could greatly lower the tax burden on our residents by bringing our residential to commercial tax split closer to 80-20. The proponent has been very flexible and willing to work with the town on the proposed zoning language. They have consistently respected the planning board's initial concerns, carefully changing the text to address issues and build agreement. What's before us tonight is another compromise from them in light of last week's planning board meeting, showing their commitment to finding common ground. Time is truly important here. As we know, the proponent is pushing to get this article on this upcoming special town meeting warrant. I suspect that any potential tenants, given today's competitive market, will likely look elsewhere if this zoning update opportunity is delayed. While I don't want this board, including myself, to give in to unfair pressure, I honestly believe the proponent has listened closely to the concerns raised by both the select board and the planning board. They are now offering language that would create the right spot for the types of businesses they know, which would definitely benefit our community. In short, we all know no zoning bylaw is perfect. However, this proponent's proposal clearly shows the real value of these parcels. Southborough may not get many more chances like this to significantly grow its non-residential tax base if we do not rezone these valuable parcels strategically located along Route 9. I strongly encourage our board to carefully consider the big long-term benefits this amendment could bring to our community, boosting our economy and financial stability for years to come. Respectfully, Alan Belniak, Member Southborough Planning Board. Mimi, would you also like me to elaborate on the questions from Mr. Litt? Or did you
I asked it
you
from
asked?
Mr. Litt.
Okay.
That's the specific parcels. That was his suggestion.
Okay.
Is there anybody in attendance that has any questions or comments? Please raise your hand.
And we have currently 20 attendees.
See any hands raising?
I don't see.
Yeah, I
any.
confirm there are no hands raised.
Okay.
That's very unusual.
All this zoning talk put everyone to sleep, I guess.
Either that or good drafting.
Wake up, everybody. Do you have a comment?
So to be clear, the planning board's responsibility here is to hold the hearings, and then we will submit a report to town meeting before a zoning article can be voted on. It there must be a report from the planning board.
And to be clear, I thought I heard somebody questioning whether it was going to be on the warrant. It's already guaranteed to be on the warrant, correct?
The select board has it on the warrant.
It's not a guarantee, but it's not a citizen's petition, so it's not a guarantee. But my understanding is the select board intend to move it forward to the warrant.
So that raises another question. When do they approve the warrant? Is it?
We're working on drafts right now, Bob. So sooner that language is in
I was
a
gonna say-
shape to get on there, the better.
Yeah, to eliminate any necessary potential amendments.
Yeah, and I think it was Marnie that said, it might have been Debbie. We don't want tinkering. We don't want motions to amend. So
I would second that motion. So,
That's usually the zoning death queue.
yeah, I will, Jay, I'll work on this tomorrow. And we will get you some revised language. We'll get it to the staff and Jay, and then we can go from there.
If you could copy me on those
Sure. Yeah.
emails too,
Is that all right,
so
Jay?
the planning board gets kept in the loop.
You know, it is all right, Jay, if well, that's what I meant by staff going. Can
I mean, I'll take a look at anything, and what
No, but
I'm
it's all right
looking at is.
to communicate with your client directly.
Yeah, no, I mean, you are free to communicate directly with the planning board. I obviously would like to be copied on stuff, but
Absolutely. Yep.
yeah.
So any other questions or comments?
No hands.
I actually do just have a basic process question.
Sure.
So we've seen this before, and I just want to ask Mr. Tallerman, the planning board and elected board is the zoning authority. So it has happened before where we get completely bypassed between lawyers. If we're the zoning authority and it is our process in town, why is it that the request was is it okay to copy the planning board? Shouldn't it be the reverse? It should go to planning board and copy Councilor Tellerman, or have I
No,
misinterpreted the law?
I think you're misunderstanding. I think what Bob is saying is he, as a lawyer, doesn't like speaking with, and because there's an ethical code for lawyers, speaking directly with an entity that's represented by counsel. I think he was just asking
Permission.
if it was okay to
Courtesy.
communicate directly with the planning board rather than running things through me, in that I've been asked to review some things, and I think that's appropriate. So I think he was just being courteous, not using me as like a pseudo level of the review. So that's all.
I do not want to be reported to the Board of Bar Owners.
Yeah.
Right, because from our perspective, although we are represented by you, you represent select board, and we have to ask for representation. So
Oh, right.
it's
But
very
again,
confusing for us.
that's not what's happening
Yeah.
here.
Okay,
Yeah. That Bob is simply just being courteous. That's all.
That's why I said staff and Jay.
Mr. Zink, you had a question or comment?
Yes, first, I'd like to thank the board for their thoughtful questions and helping drive the process and make this better. I mean, there's a lot of good ideas in the past few meetings, so we appreciate that. Let's have one comment too regarding timing. A lot of time in these projects, and this is my 41st year as a developer, unfortunately, I'm getting older. And the timing.
It's the alternative.
Exactly, it beats the alternative. But actually, the timing a lot of time is not chosen by the developer. If there's by us, it would be easy to say yes. The problem is there are alternatives. They're not with us. They're not with Atlantic, and they're not in Southborough. So we do not control a client as with any one client. We're a service provider and they are the client. So that's not a decision. So the reason the timing is we're trying to meet a time frame of a client. And I don't know what's going to happen. That's the reason it is. If we controlled it, it'd be easier for us to say it.
Thank you.
I just want to articulate that it's not our choice as a developer to do this. Because if we have no client, then there's no project, then there's nothing to talk about.
You're muted, Marty.
I just said thank you. I appreciate that and understand as a service provider, you're kind of the middleman here.
Yeah, and I also appreciate your input and your position. I think this is from where we started to where we are today. This is a much better piece now of where we are. So it was a lot of good ideas. That's what it is. A lot of times it's a collaborative process, and there's a lot of people putting input in. And a lot of times, like I said, if you listen and we're open to listening to make it a better project, I think that's how we arrive at a good spot. So thank you.
Thank you.
Agree.
So if there's nothing else, thank you everybody for coming. Is there someone?
Yeah,
Oh,
there's
I
a hand up.
Okay.
Oh,
I think it's Claire. Ready to
Claire.
go?
Claire
Yes,
Reynolds.
thanks, everybody. Claire Reynolds, 104 Main Street. Great discussion tonight. I would just like to make sure that everybody understands that the fact that nobody had comments from the audience doesn't mean that there aren't a lot of questions. There's a lot to process here, and I hope that there's going to be another follow-on session as both parties work together to the best solution for the town. But I just want to make sure that it doesn't go on record that at this particular meeting, nobody had any questions, because I think they do. I have questions. I just can't right now organize them logically because there's so much information. So thank you.
Understood. Our next hearing is September 29th.
Perfect.
So anybody else? Going, gone?
So I make a motion to continue the public hearing for the bylaw zoning for highway major retail, section 174-2B. Oh, to September 29th, Karina, I need, or Colleen, what time?
I think 7 p.m.
7 p.m.
Okay, I second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further comment? Seeing none, all in favor, Latrell, yes.
Houlihan, yes.
Demiria, yes.
Russia, yes.
I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Mimi, can we, before you adjourn, Marnie, while we have Jay here, is it appropriate to discuss, or should we do it offline, the Alan's attendance? Or is that clear as a participant and voting member, just so that everybody is
That's
clear? Because this is the second meeting that Alan, the planning board member, Alan Belniak, hasn't attended, but we just want to be clear if he can continue or not, since we have town council.
But then
You
if
could,
the Mullen
you could
rules
forward
apply.
him the email I sent this morning on that if you like.
He
I-
received it.
We did. We forwarded it already. So there's no problem. Is that what you're saying, Jay?
That's what I said in my email.
Okay. Just
Madam Chair,
confirm.
point of clarification. Since we'll be making changes to this, I think it's appropriate that we copy the planning of the select board so that if they print the warrant, at least the changes are in the article as printed. And I think they're probably going to do that prior to, or maybe I'm wrong.
No, they probably would. So it's 14 days. So
14 days, so,
for the posting of the warrant.
yeah, so should I copy the select board? Just,
I certainly would communicate with them if you're working on version control, Bob.
yeah.
Um, Mimi, it might not be a bad idea just to publicly state Alan's position.
So Karina read his
No,
letter.
not his position, but that what Jay's point was is that he can actually vote even though he's missed several meetings. I just think the public should be aware of that.
Okay, because
think-
this is not
It's not
Can't say the word.
adjudicatory, yeah.
Inventory, right?
I couldn't say that.
me either.
So there are 5 voting members for this as we go through the town meeting, and on the night of town meeting is when we'll actually vote for it. So am I ready to adjourn?
I think just one more thing to Attorney Buckley, if you wouldn't mind copying me on the changes, I'd like to run through just to make sure that
Sure,
you've
no.
hit what we've discussed.
No, I
And
agree.
then send it to
I
the
intend
select
to
board.
copy the chair, staff, and Attorney Telemann.
Okay, perfect.
So just a question, if the planning board or we'll keep the hearing open, and if the planning board has further edits, then would we make those on the floor? How would that go? We would have a version for the floor?
If the warrant's closed, well, it's not going to be closed, but if I think the warrant doesn't close till the select board votes on it on the 7th of October. But if they won't accept anything after the 29th, which is our next meeting, then yes, that's. what we
Once it's printed.
Right. I mean, there's different ways to, and we've dealt with this before, if there's any variation in what is in the warrant and what is preferred as the version at town meeting, there's different ways to do it, either a main motion, a motion to amend, or a main motion using a handout or something else. But that's all out there in front of us. We can talk about that later.
Thank you.
But I will copy the select board just for their information. So in case they want to include it. Doesn't mean it's been approved by anyone.
Do we have a motion?
Yes, I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I second the motion.
I just want to say thank you, everyone, for coming out on another night. This was a good collaborative process and hopefully we'll get there. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Seeing none, all in favor, Latrell, yes.
Houlihan, yes.
Demiria, yes.
Yes.
Thank you all. Good night.
Good
Thank you.
night.
Good night.
For joining, Jay.